The land of ancient Egypt often feels like it is standing still in memory. A wide stretch of earth, held gently between desert and river. On one side, endless sand that never truly changes. On the other, the Nile River, slow and steady, moving like time itself. Before the sun rises, everything is quiet. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but a deep and natural silence that belongs to early morning air. The sky is still dark, but not completely black. It carries a soft blue tone, almost gray, as if the world is slowly remembering how to become visible again. In small farming villages along the river, people are already awake. Not because they are rushing. Not because they are in a hurry. But because life here follows the rhythm of light and heat. Farmers in ancient Egypt did not wake to clocks. They woke to temperature, to wind, to the faint sounds of animals beginning to move. A rooster might call somewhere in the distance. A dog might shift its body near a mud brick wall. A child might turn in sleep, hearing movement outside the home. Houses in these villages are simple. Built from sun-dried mud bricks. They hold the warmth of the previous day deep inside their walls. Even in early morning, they are not cold. Just still. Inside one of these homes, a farmer slowly rises. There is no sudden movement. No urgency. Only the quiet understanding that the day has already begun, even if the sun has not yet shown itself. He sits for a moment on the edge of his sleeping mat. The floor beneath him is firm, packed earth sometimes covered with woven reed mats. The air is cool against his skin. Around him, his family is also waking. A soft shifting of cloth. The quiet sound of breathing changing as sleep fades. There is very little speaking at this hour. Not because there is nothing to say, but because mornings feel too early for words. Somewhere inside the home, a small fire is prepared. Not a large fire. Just enough to heat water or warm simple food. Smoke rises slowly through a small opening in the roof. It moves upward in thin, lazy streams, disappearing into the morning air. Outside, the world is still changing from night to day. And slowly, as the first light reaches the horizon, the river begins to reflect it. The Nile is never loud. It does not crash or rush. It simply moves, carrying life in a steady flow. For the farmers, this river is everything. Not just water. Not just geography. It is the reason fields exist. It is the reason villages stay in one place instead of moving. Before the sun fully rises, a farmer steps outside. The air feels different here. Wider. Open. The smell of damp earth is faint but present. Somewhere nearby, reeds sway slightly with the movement of wind coming off the water. He pauses for a moment, looking toward the fields. They are still dark shapes in the distance. Flat land waiting patiently. Not yet green in detail, but full of memory from past seasons. Everything in this world depends on timing. Too early, and nothing grows. Too late, and the land changes again. So the farmer listens. Not with effort, but naturally, as if the land itself is speaking in quiet ways. A second farmer appears nearby. Then another. Small figures moving slowly through village paths. Each one carrying simple tools, or empty baskets, or nothing at all in the beginning. There is no gathering in a formal sense. No announcement. People simply begin to move in the same direction, like water finding its way through soil. Toward the fields. The path is familiar. Walked countless times. The ground slightly uneven under bare feet or simple sandals. Dust and earth mixing softly with each step. As they walk, the sky slowly changes. Dark blue becomes lighter blue. Then soft gold appears at the edge of the horizon. The sun is not fully visible yet, but its presence is already felt. It warms the world before it is even seen. Birds begin to appear in small groups. Not loud at first. Just scattered movement across trees and reeds. Their calls are light, almost fragile against the growing brightness. The farmers do not look up often. Their attention is forward. Toward work that has been done for generations. Toward fields that will soon require care. Toward water channels that must be checked. Toward soil that will need attention before heat arrives later in the day. Everything is slow, but not careless. Everything is calm, but not meaningless. This is the beginning of a farming day in ancient Egypt. Not dramatic. Not sudden. Just steady. As the first full light touches the land, the Nile shines more clearly now. A soft ribbon of movement cutting through earth and time. And the farmers continue walking toward it, step by step, into another day that feels very much like the last, and yet completely necessary for life to continue. The morning is now fully beginning. And the work of the day is only just starting to awake. Morning in a riverland village in ancient Egypt does not arrive all at once. It comes slowly, in layers. First, there is light. Then there is sound. Then there is movement. And only after that, the village feels fully awake. As the sun rises higher, the mud brick homes begin to warm. Their walls, thick and earthy, hold the coolness of night for only a short while. Inside, families shift from sleep into quiet activity. There is no sudden beginning to the day. No sharp division between rest and work. Life simply changes shape. A farmer who stepped outside earlier now returns briefly to his home. The doorway is low, and he ducks slightly as he enters. Inside, the air feels still, almost enclosed, as if the house is gently holding yesterday's warmth. His family is already moving. A woman sits near a small cooking area. The fire is modest, carefully controlled. Not meant for comfort, but for necessity. She prepares simple food. Bread made from grain, already ground into flour. Dough that has been shaped by hand and left to rest overnight. The smell is soft. Earthy. Familiar. It mixes with smoke and the faint scent of stored grain. Children are awake now as well. They do not rush. They do not shout. They sit or stand quietly, watching the morning unfold in their own slow understanding. Water is brought in clay jars from storage pots. The water is not abundant, but it is carefully managed. Every drop matters in a land shaped by river cycles. The farmer eats without hurry. Bread is simple. Dense. Sometimes slightly rough in texture. It is filling more than it is delicate. Alongside it, there may be onions or dates. Small pieces of food that carry strong natural sweetness or sharpness. Meals are not about variety. They are about continuation. About having enough strength for what comes next. Outside, the village is more active now. People move between homes. A few carry baskets. Others carry tools wrapped in cloth or tied with rope. The tools are simple but essential. Wooden plows, stone-tipped implements, reed containers. There is a rhythm to their movement that feels almost unspoken. No one needs to explain where to go. The fields are always waiting. The Nile has already begun its daily presence more strongly. In the morning light, it reflects the sky in shifting tones. Pale blue, soft silver, and touches of gold. It looks calm, but it is never truly still. The river feeds everything here. Not just water, but timing. Not just soil, but life itself. As the farmers prepare to leave the village again, small tasks are completed. Animals are checked. Goats or cattle are guided gently into open areas. Not far, just enough to graze near controlled patches of land. Some tools are repaired quickly. A rope tightened. A wooden handle checked for cracks. These small actions are done without ceremony, but with attention. Nothing here is wasted. Even moments of waiting are used. A farmer might sit briefly in the shade of his home before leaving again. Not because he is resting fully, but because the day is still young enough to allow a pause. The sunlight grows stronger now. It spreads across rooftops, across narrow paths, across the edges of the fields beyond the village. Dust begins to rise slightly with movement. Not thick, just enough to be visible in the light. Children sometimes follow adults for a short distance, then return. Their role in the morning is not heavy. It is observation. Learning without instruction. Seeing without being told. The village itself feels like a living thing that slowly stretches awake. Doors open. Close. Open again. Voices remain low. Even conversations feel soft, as if speaking too loudly would disturb the balance of the morning. And then, as time moves forward without urgency, the farmers begin to leave the village more fully. Groups form naturally. Not organized by command, but by familiarity. People who know each other's fields. People who share irrigation paths. People who understand the same stretch of land. They walk together toward the fields again. The same direction as before sunrise, but now under a brighter sky. The land ahead is fully visible now. Flat, wide, and carefully shaped by human hands over generations. Channels of water stretch like quiet lines through the soil. Small raised areas mark where crops will grow. Everything depends on these patterns. Everything depends on water being guided, not wasted. As they walk, conversation remains minimal. Sometimes a few words about weather. Sometimes about soil. Sometimes about nothing at all. Silence is not uncomfortable here. It is part of the work. The river is closer now. Its presence feels stronger in the air, even before it is seen again. A coolness near the water's edge contrasts with the warming land. Birds move across the surface in small, scattered patterns. Fish ripple beneath the water in unseen motion. And the farmers arrive again at the fields. This is where the morning truly becomes labor. Not in sudden effort, but in gradual continuation of what life requires. Hands will soon touch soil. Water channels will be checked. Tools will be used with practiced ease. But for this moment, there is still a brief pause. A quiet standing at the edge of work. A breath taken in a land that has been shaping human life for thousands of years, gently and steadily, without ever needing to speak. And the day moves forward. Slowly. Naturally. Like the river itself. By the time the sun is fully present above the horizon, the walk to the fields feels longer in light, but not in distance. The same paths are used every day. They are not marked by signs or built roads in the modern sense. They are simply earth pressed down by countless footsteps, shaped slowly by time and repetition. The farmers move along these paths without hesitation. Each step feels familiar. The ground is slightly uneven, sometimes soft where recent moisture has gathered, sometimes dry and cracked where the sun has already begun its steady work. Small clouds of dust rise gently and fall again just as quickly. There is no rush in the walking. Even when the day is already warming, movement remains steady, measured, almost patient. Tools are carried in simple ways. A wooden hoe rests on a shoulder. A rope is coiled loosely in a hand. A woven basket hangs from the forearm, light for now, waiting to be filled later. Everything has a purpose, but nothing is heavy in a way that feels overwhelming. The work is known. The body remembers it more than the mind needs to explain it. As the farmers approach the fields, the landscape opens wider. This is the cultivated land, shaped carefully beside the Nile's reach. It is not wild desert here, but something in between. A place where water and earth meet through human effort. Narrow irrigation channels stretch across the soil like quiet lines drawn by hand. Some are full. Some are waiting. The water inside them moves slowly, guided by small changes in ground level, by gates made from mud and reed, by hands that understand flow more than calculation. The fields themselves are divided into sections. Not perfectly square or uniform in a strict sense, but organized enough to guide planting and watering. Each section has memory in it. Memory of previous seasons. Of what grew well. Of what struggled. The farmers reach their assigned areas. There is no formal instruction needed. Each person already knows their place. The land itself has taught them over time. A few begin by checking the water channels. They crouch near the edges, touching the damp soil with their fingers. Feeling its texture. Its temperature. Its weight. Water is gently guided, not forced. Small barriers are adjusted with care. A handful of mud can change the direction of flow. A simple reed can slow or allow movement. These are small actions, but they decide everything. Nearby, others begin loosening soil. The tools are simple. A wooden handle with a stone or metal edge. Used slowly, rhythmically. The motion is repetitive, almost meditative. Lift. Press. Turn. Repeat. The earth responds softly, breaking apart under steady pressure. There is no violence in the work. Only transformation. The soil is not just ground. It is preparation. It is future food held in waiting. As the morning continues, the sun climbs higher, and shadows shorten. The air becomes warmer, but not yet heavy. There is still comfort in movement. Occasionally, a farmer pauses to adjust clothing or wipe sweat from the forehead. These pauses are brief, natural, and unspoken. No one needs to comment on the heat. It is simply part of the day. The sound of work is gentle. Not loud or chaotic. Just layered. The soft scrape of tools against earth. The occasional splash of water being redirected. The distant call of birds near the river. Even conversation, when it happens, stays low. A few words about water levels. About soil condition. About timing for planting or irrigation. Nothing urgent. Everything practical. The fields themselves seem to respond to attention. Where water is guided correctly, the soil darkens slightly. Where it is too dry, the surface lightens and cracks faintly. These changes are subtle, but meaningful. Farmers read them the way others might read written text. Not quickly, but with understanding built over years. Farther out, the Nile continues its quiet presence. It does not change speed or shape based on human need. It remains constant, and yet everything depends on it. The farmers know this without needing to think about it directly. Work continues in cycles. One section of land is prepared, then another. Water is moved, then checked again. Soil is adjusted, then left to settle. There is no final moment of completion in the morning. Only progression. Time here is not divided sharply. It flows, like the river, without visible edges. As the sun rises higher, the land becomes brighter. The colors of the field deepen. The greens of early growth become more noticeable where crops are already present. In other places, the soil remains open, waiting for planting. And still, the farmers continue. Step by step. Motion by motion. Not thinking of distance or end, but only of the small part directly in front of them. The field becomes the entire world for a while. And the morning work settles into its steady rhythm, as if it has always been happening and will continue without interruption. By mid-morning, the fields beside the Nile feel fully awake. Not in the way people wake, but in the way land begins to respond to care. The sun is higher now. Its light is steady, spreading across the fields in wide, even layers. Shadows are shorter, softer, and closer to the ground. The farmers have already settled into their work. There is no clear beginning anymore. Only continuation. Water is the first thing that guides everything. It moves through narrow channels cut into the earth, slowly adjusting its direction based on small barriers made of mud and reeds. These barriers are simple, shaped by hand, pressed into place without tools more complex than patience. A farmer kneels at the edge of a channel. His hands sink slightly into the damp soil. The texture is soft, cool, and heavy at the same time. He presses gently, reshaping a small ridge. Water responds almost immediately, changing direction in a slow curve. Nothing here is sudden. Even water obeys gradual influence. Nearby, another farmer watches the movement of irrigation. Not staring, but observing in quiet attention. He waits for the water to reach a certain patch of land before adjusting another opening. The timing is not measured in minutes. It is measured in flow. Where water spreads, soil darkens. It absorbs life slowly, like breath returning after stillness. The earth changes color in small patches. Dark brown where it is wet. Lighter where it remains dry. These differences guide every decision. Farmers do not guess. They read the land. A wooden tool is used to loosen soil further in areas that will soon receive seeds or young plants. The motion is steady and repetitive. Not fast. Not forceful. Lift. Press. Turn. The sound is soft. Earth breaking gently, not resisting, but yielding. The soil in these fields is rich because of the river. Each season, the Nile leaves behind layers of fine silt. Over time, this builds land that can grow food, but only if it is guided carefully. Without attention, it would harden, or dry unevenly, or lose its balance. So the farmers remain close to it, always watching, always adjusting. Occasionally, small groups gather briefly at junctions where water channels meet. These are quiet moments of coordination. Not formal discussion, but shared understanding. A hand gesture toward a section of field. A nod. A short phrase about flow or timing. Then movement resumes. Each person returns to their area, continuing the work as if it never paused. The sun now feels stronger, but still manageable. Heat rises slowly from the ground, not yet overwhelming. The air carries the scent of wet soil mixed with dry earth. A natural combination that feels both heavy and alive. In some sections, early planting begins. Small seeds are placed into prepared soil with careful spacing. Fingers press them gently into the earth, then cover them lightly. This is not rushed work. Each seed is placed with intention, even if the intention is quiet and unspoken. A field is not just filled. It is arranged over time. There is a rhythm to planting that matches breathing more than thought. Place. Cover. Move. Repeat. Farther away, other farmers continue managing water, adjusting flow so that no area receives too much or too little. Balance is always shifting, never fixed. The Nile's gift is not constant control. It is constant change. And so the work must adapt with it. At times, a farmer pauses and sits briefly on the edge of a raised field. Not to rest fully, but to observe. To let the eyes adjust. To see how the soil responds. Even stillness has purpose here. In the distance, the river remains visible. A calm line of movement that never seems to hurry. Birds pass over it in small groups, barely disturbing the surface below. The fields stretch between river and desert like a narrow world of effort and patience. Everything depends on timing that cannot be rushed. Water must arrive at the right moment. Soil must be prepared at the right depth. Seeds must enter the earth when conditions are just right. There is no shortcut for any of it. Only repetition. Only care. Only steady attention given over and over again, across hours that feel both long and familiar. As the morning moves forward, the farmers continue their work without change in pace. Not faster. Not slower. Just steady. Like the river beside them. Like the land beneath them. Like the day itself unfolding without resistance. And the fields slowly, quietly, begin to become what they are meant to be. As the sun climbs into its highest point, the land begins to change its feeling. Not suddenly. Not sharply. But slowly, as if the earth itself is breathing in warmth and holding it for a moment too long. The fields that felt comfortable in the morning now carry a heavier air. Heat gathers above the soil, rising in faint waves that blur the edges of distance. The horizon looks softer, almost less defined, as light and warmth blend together. Work continues for a while longer, but the pace naturally slows. Movements become more deliberate. Less frequent. More spaced out. A farmer lifts a tool, presses it into the soil, then pauses a little longer before the next motion. Not from exhaustion alone, but from the natural agreement between body and heat. The river remains nearby, steady and unchanged, though its presence now feels more important than before. Not louder, just more necessary. At certain moments, work stops in small groups. Not all at once. One area pauses. Then another. Like quiet waves of rest moving across the fields. Farmers begin to walk back toward shaded places. Some shade comes from simple structures. Light coverings made of reed or woven plant material. Others rest beneath scattered trees near the edge of cultivated land. The ground under shade feels different immediately. Cooler. Still. More forgiving. A farmer sits down slowly, placing tools beside him with care. Not throwing them aside. Not abandoning them. Just setting them down as if they, too, deserve rest. Water is shared in small amounts. Stored in clay jars that keep it slightly cooler than the air. It is not cold in a modern sense, but it carries relief simply by contrast. Each sip is small. Measured. Not wasted. People do not speak much during this time. Conversation is unnecessary. The heat itself encourages quiet. Instead, there is the sound of breathing settling. Of bodies easing into stillness. Of cloth shifting slightly as people adjust their positions in the shade. Some farmers lean back against warm stone or packed earth walls. Others sit cross-legged, hands resting loosely in their laps. Eyes half closed. Not sleeping deeply, but resting in a light, aware state. The land outside the shade continues to shimmer under the sun. Fields wait. Soil remains prepared. Water channels still hold their carefully guided flow, though now observed less frequently during this pause. Everything is held in a temporary stillness. Even birds seem less active at this hour. Their movement becomes less frequent, more distant. The air itself feels heavier, as if sound travels more slowly. A breeze sometimes moves through from the direction of the river. It is gentle. Not strong enough to change much, but enough to be felt clearly. It carries a faint coolness, passing over skin and drying sweat that has gathered through the morning work. In these moments, the contrast between shade and sun becomes deeply noticeable. One side of the world feels intense and bright. The other feels calm and muted. Farmers often remain in this resting state for a while. Not because they are finished with the day, but because the land itself is temporarily at its peak heat, and pushing against it would bring no benefit. Time here is not measured by clocks or strict schedules. It is measured by suitability. When the land allows work, work happens. When it resists through heat, rest becomes part of the work. A man adjusts his position slightly, shifting weight from one side to the other. His hands rest on his knees. His breathing slows naturally. Nearby, another farmer quietly checks a tool, not repairing it, just ensuring it is still in good condition for later. Even rest carries a sense of readiness. The Nile continues its steady presence in the distance. Its surface may shimmer more strongly now under full sunlight, but its movement remains unchanged. It does not rush. It does not pause. It simply continues. And the farmers, in their shaded stillness, remain connected to it even in rest. Because everything here, even silence, even pause, is tied to the river's rhythm. After some time, the heat begins to feel less sharp. Not because it disappears, but because the body adjusts to it. The mind softens around it. A slow transition begins. Farmers start to sit up again. Not yet returning to full work, but no longer fully resting. This is the quiet threshold between pause and continuation. The day has not ended its demanding phase, but it has allowed a space for recovery. And in that space, life does not stop. It simply softens. Breath returns to rhythm. Attention returns slowly to fields waiting beyond the shade. And soon, movement will begin again. Not quickly, but steadily. Like everything else in this land, after the quiet wait of midday rest, the land begins to shift again. It is not dramatic. There is no clear signal that work has returned. Instead, it happens in small movements. A farmer stands first. Then another. A third adjusts his clothing and slowly reaches for a tool resting beside him. Shade is not abandoned quickly. It is left gradually, as if even departure from rest deserves patience. The sun is still strong above, but its harshest point has passed. The heat feels more even now, less sharp at the edges. Farmers return to the fields in a steady, unhurried flow. The walk back is quieter than the morning walk. Bodies are looser now, movements less tense. The land ahead looks unchanged, but familiar in a deeper way, as if it has been waiting without complaint. When they arrive, the fields are much as they were left. Soil still damp in some places, dry in others. Water channels still holding their carefully shaped paths. But time has done small work even during rest. Moist earth has settled slightly. Dry patches have warmed further. The surface of the fields carries the quiet mark of midday sun. Work resumes not with urgency, but with adjustment. One of the first tasks is checking tools. Wooden handles are inspected carefully. Not in a rushed way, but with attention that comes from long familiarity. A small crack in wood is noticed immediately. A loose binding is corrected with simple cord or plant fiber. Stone or metal edges are wiped clean of soil. Not because dirt is harmful, but because clarity of tool means clarity of work. Hands are steady as they work. These tools are not separate from the farmer's lives. They are extensions of it. Nearby, irrigation channels are checked again. Water levels may have shifted slightly with evaporation and absorption. A farmer crouches at the edge of a channel, watching how water moves through a narrow opening. He adjusts a small ridge of mud. The change is simple, but the effect is immediate. Water redirects itself, spreading more evenly into a nearby section of field. This kind of work requires patience more than strength, attention more than force. Elsewhere, soil maintenance continues. Areas that were loosened in the morning are now examined again. Some parts may need further breaking apart. Others may need smoothing to prepare for later planting. The movement of tools is slow and repetitive. Lift, press, smooth, repeat. There is a rhythm to it that does not feel tiring in the same way modern labor might be described. It is tiring, but familiar. Known. Expected. The body learns to accept it. The sun begins its gradual descent from its highest point, though it still fills the sky with strong light. Shadows slowly begin to stretch again, just slightly at first. Farmers notice this not by watching the sky constantly, but by feeling changes in temperature and light on their skin. Work continues across multiple small areas of the fields. There is no single focal point. Instead, the land is divided into many small responsibilities. One person focuses on water flow. Another on soil texture. Another on preparing areas for later planting or adjustment. Occasionally, someone pauses to look across a wider section of field. Not to evaluate in a strict sense, but to understand how everything is connecting. The fields are not separate tasks. They are one continuous system. And the farmers are part of it, not outside of it. In the distance, the Nile remains steady. It reflects light differently now, slightly softer than earlier in the day. The brightness is still present, but less harsh. A small breeze moves across the fields again, bringing a faint sense of relief after the strongest heat. Cloth shifts gently. Dust rises and settles. Time moves forward in a way that feels almost unnoticeable. Hands continue to work. Earth continues to respond. Water continues to move. Everything remains in balance through constant small adjustments. There is no final achievement in this part of the day. Only continuation of care. Only maintenance of what has already been shaped. And as the afternoon settles more fully into its rhythm, the farmers remain present with the land, steady and patient, as if time itself is something they walk through rather than chase. By late afternoon, the land begins to feel like it is breathing more slowly. The strongest heat has softened, though warmth still lingers in the soil and in the air above it. Light shifts gently now, no longer rising, but beginning its quiet descent. Farmers continue their work, but something subtle has changed. The rhythm is steadier, almost reflective. The Nile remains the center of everything here, even when it is not directly in sight from every part of the field. Its presence is felt in every channel of water, in every patch of fertile soil, in every decision made throughout the day. Nothing in this landscape exists without it. The river does not hurry. It does not pause. It moves in a continuous, ancient flow that feels larger than any single day. And the farmers, in their own way, move with it. Not in imitation, but in dependence. Not in awareness of every moment, but in a lifetime of understanding that the river's rhythm shapes all things. In the fields, movement becomes more coordinated again as the day shifts toward its later hours. Tasks that began in the morning now reach quiet stages of completion or adjustment. Water channels are checked once more, not because they are failing, but because water must always be guided with care. Even a small change in flow can affect a wide stretch of land over time. So farmers remain attentive. A hand placed briefly in a channel. A small adjustment of soil at the edge of an irrigation path. A moment of watching how water settles into a lower patch of earth. These actions are small, but they hold the structure of survival. Across different parts of the fields, people move in a loose, connected pattern. There is no strict formation, but there is awareness of others nearby. A glance toward a neighboring section of land. A brief exchange of words about water levels or soil condition. Then silence again. The community does not feel separate from the land. It feels woven into it. The river, in its quiet constancy, influences not only agriculture, but also time itself. Days are not divided sharply into hours in the way modern life might do. Instead, they are shaped by light, heat, and the behavior of water. Morning is for beginning. Midday is for waiting and resting. Afternoon is for returning and adjusting. Evening will be for closing and returning home. Everything flows. Everything follows. As the sun lowers slightly more, shadows begin to stretch across the fields. They grow longer, softer, touching the edges of irrigation channels and resting over sections of soil that have already been worked. The change in light signals something unspoken. Not an ending yet, but a gradual easing. Farmers notice this without needing to look directly at the sky for long. It is felt in the cooling of the air. In the way tools feel slightly less warm to the touch. In the way movement becomes more comfortable again after the peak heat has passed. Some sections of the field grow quieter as tasks conclude. Tools are placed carefully on the ground, not dropped, but set down as if the land itself should not be disturbed unnecessarily. Other areas remain active, still in the final adjustments of the day's labor. This uneven rhythm is natural. Work here does not end all at once. It fades gradually, like light leaving the sky. In the distance, the Nile continues its steady movement. Its surface reflects the changing sky in softer tones now. Less bright than midday. More layered. Almost reflective in a different emotional sense, as if the river itself is part of the day's quiet ending. A farmer stands for a moment longer than usual, looking across the fields. Not evaluating in urgency. Just observing. The land has changed since morning, though the changes are subtle. Soil is more settled. Water is more evenly distributed. Fields show the quiet signs of care given throughout the day. There is satisfaction here, but not excitement. Only quiet recognition. Work has been done. Life has been maintained. And the river has continued to guide everything without interruption. The farmers begin to gather their tools again. Not all at once, but gradually, as individual tasks reach natural stopping points. The sound of movement becomes softer. Less frequent. More spaced out. The fields remain behind them, still and patient, ready for tomorrow in the same way they were ready for today. And as the afternoon continues to move toward evening, the connection between river, land, and people remains unbroken. A quiet system of life, repeating gently through time. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the edge of the world, the fields take on a softer tone. Light is no longer sharp. It becomes gentle, stretched out across the land in long, calm layers. Shadows grow wider, resting over soil that has been worked and shaped through the day. The farmers begin their return. Not all at once, and not in any formal order. Instead, like water finding its path back to a lower place, people drift away from the fields in quiet groups and separate steps. Tools are gathered carefully. Wooden handles are brushed clean of soil. Stone and metal edges are wiped with cloth or hands. Nothing is left in disorder. Even the end of work carries a sense of respect for what has been used. The walk back toward the village feels different from the morning journey. The body is heavier now, not from strain alone, but from completion. From a full day of steady movement. The path is the same, but the feeling is not. Dust rises lightly under footsteps, but it no longer feels like part of effort. It feels like part of return. The Nile remains visible in the distance, still flowing as it always does. Its presence in the evening light is softer now. The surface reflects the sky in muted golds and fading blues. It does not change with human movement. It simply continues. As the farmers approach the village, small signs of evening life appear. Smoke rising from cooking fires. Doors opening. Quiet voices beginning to return. Inside homes, the preparation of food has already started. The fire is small, controlled, steady. It is not meant to illuminate the world, only to support it. Bread is prepared again, as it often is. Grain stored carefully through previous days is now ground and shaped into dough. Cooking is simple, but consistent. The smell of food spreads through the village slowly. Warm. Earthy. Familiar. It is not a scent of variety or abundance in a modern sense, but of stability. Of repetition that ensures survival. Families gather inside or near their homes. There is no rush to eat. No urgency in conversation. People sit down gradually, as if the transition from work to rest is something that should not be rushed. The farmer who spent the day in the fields now sits quietly with his family. His body is tired in a natural way, the kind of tiredness that comes from steady work rather than strain alone. Food is shared simply. Bread, perhaps onions, maybe dates depending on what is available. Water is passed carefully in clay containers. Each movement is unhurried. Outside, the village grows quieter as darkness approaches. Not immediately, but step by step. Light fades from rooftops. Shadows fill the narrow paths between homes. The sky shifts from gold to deep blue, and then toward a darker tone that signals night without harshness. Sounds also soften. Animals settle. Birds become still. Even conversation inside homes becomes lower, less frequent. There is a sense that the day is closing, not abruptly, but gently, like a door being left slightly open until it finally rests in place. After eating, some people remain seated in quiet rest. Others begin simple preparations for the next day. Tools are placed where they will be easy to find in the morning. Water is stored again in cool containers. Nothing is rushed, but nothing is forgotten. The rhythm of tomorrow is already quietly forming in the background. As night deepens, the village becomes still. Not empty, but calm. Homes hold soft light inside them for a while longer, then gradually grow darker as fires are reduced. The air outside cools slowly. A light breeze may move through, coming from the direction of the river, carrying with it a sense of openness and distance. The Nile itself continues its steady movement beyond the village. Unchanging. Uninterrupted. A presence that remains even when unseen. Inside the homes, families settle into rest. Not all at once, but naturally, as bodies relax and silence becomes more complete. The sounds of the day fade. Work, water, tools, movement, all of it becomes memory rather than presence. And the village returns to stillness. The kind of stillness that is not empty, but full of continuity. A pause between days that feels less like an ending and more like a return to waiting. Tomorrow will come in the same way. Slowly. Softly. With light first, then movement, then work. But for now, there is only night. And the gentle silence of a land shaped by river, soil, and steady human hands resting after another complete day. Night in ancient Egypt does not arrive with force. It spreads. Slowly. Like ink dissolving into still water. By now, the village is mostly quiet. The last traces of cooking fires have dimmed into small glowing embers inside or near homes. Light becomes rare, and sound becomes careful, as if the air itself asks for gentleness. The farmers are no longer in the fields. But the fields do not feel abandoned. They remain in place, dark and still under the wide sky, holding the work of the day inside their soil. The Nile continues its movement through the night. Even in darkness, it is present. Not seen clearly, but known. A faint reflection of the sky sometimes reveals where the river flows, a soft band of lighter darkness against the deeper night around it. In some quiet moments, a farmer may step outside his home briefly. Not for work. Not for task. Only for awareness. The night air is cooler now. It moves gently across skin, carrying the scent of earth, water, and distant reeds. The village is almost silent, but not completely. There are still small sounds. A shifting of cloth inside a home. A soft animal movement near a wall. The distant rhythm of insects that belong to warm land and quiet nights. Everything is reduced, but everything still exists. Inside homes, families lie down for rest. Sleeping mats are simple. Woven materials placed on packed earth or slightly raised surfaces. There is no separation between earth and living space in a modern sense. The ground itself is part of life. Sleep comes slowly. Not always immediately. Some people remain awake for a while, listening to the night outside. Not in fear, but in familiarity. Night is not something unknown here. It is a regular presence, as natural as morning light or midday heat. The river continues to define the rhythm even now. Though farming has stopped for the day, water does not stop moving. Irrigation channels, now unused, still hold traces of the day's flow. Damp soil remains dark in patches. Small areas of moisture slowly settle deeper into the earth. The land is always absorbing. Always adjusting. Even in rest. Far beyond the village, where cultivated land fades into wider riverbanks and desert edges, the night feels larger. The sky opens fully. Stars appear in quiet patterns, scattered but steady. They do not move quickly to the human eye. They simply remain. For farmers, this sky is not decoration. It is orientation. A silent guide that helps mark time and season without words. But at night, it is also something softer. A reminder that the world is wide, and yet still connected. Somewhere near the river, Small movements continue. Fish beneath the water. Birds settling into reeds. The river itself flowing without pause. Even in darkness, life does not stop. It only becomes quieter. In the village, silence deepens further as more people fall into sleep. The sense of time becomes less clear now. There is no work dividing it, no movement marking it. Only rest. Only continuation. The farmer who worked in the fields earlier may now be asleep, his body still holding the memory of movement from the day. Hands that shaped soil. Feet that walked paths. Eyes that watched water flow. All of it now still. But not gone. The land will hold that memory until morning returns. The night is long, but not heavy. It passes slowly, like breathing. Sometimes wind moves gently through the village, touching walls made of mud brick, passing over roofs, and continuing toward the fields. There is a sense that everything is connected even in silence. Village. River. Field. Sky. All resting together under the same darkness. And as the night continues, there is no urgency anywhere. No demand. Only the steady presence of time moving forward without disturbance. The fields remain dark and patient. The river continues its quiet path. And the people sleep, waiting for the return of light that will begin the cycle again. Slowly. Softly. As always. Before dawn arrives, the world feels like it is holding its breath. Not in tension, but in quiet pause. The night is still present, deep and wide, covering the land in a calm darkness that has lasted for hours. The village is almost completely silent now. Even the smallest sounds have softened into the background of sleep. Inside the homes, people rest in simple stillness. Bodies are relaxed. Breathing is slow and even. The day before feels distant now, not forgotten, but gently set aside. And yet, even in this deep quiet, life does not fully stop. It only becomes less visible. Outside, the fields remain unchanged in appearance, but not untouched by time. Soil holds the memory of water that passed through it. Irrigation channels rest in their shaped paths. The land is settled, as if it has exhaled after a long day of attention. The Nile continues moving through the night. It is not seen clearly, but it is always there. A presence more than a sight. A rhythm more than a shape. It passes through darkness without effort, carrying the same steady motion it had in daylight. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing alters it. Far from the village, the air is cooler now. The heat of the day has fully left the ground, and in its place is a quiet coolness that spreads evenly across fields and pathways. This is the deepest part of night. The time before any sign of morning begins. And yet, even here, change is already preparing itself. Very slowly, without announcement, the edge of the sky begins to shift. Not yet light. Only the faintest suggestion that darkness is not permanent. A subtle softening in the blackness overhead. A change so small it is almost felt rather than seen. The farmers do not see this moment consciously. They are still asleep. But their bodies, like the land they work, are already part of this rhythm. They have lived through it so many times that it becomes natural, like breathing. Rest ends not with awareness, but with gradual readiness. In the fields, nothing moves. But everything is waiting. Water rests in quiet channels. Soil holds its shape. Paths remain worn into the earth from countless days before. The river continues its slow, uninterrupted journey. And the night begins to thin, almost imperceptibly. A hint of change gathers at the edge of the horizon. Still dark. Still quiet. But no longer entirely still in feeling. This is how mornings begin here. Not with sudden brightness, but with gradual return. A soft rebuilding of light across the world. Inside the village, the first signs of waking will come soon, but not yet. For now, there is only this deep, final calm of night. A land resting between cycles. Between silence and movement. Between darkness and the slow return of day. And as the last hours of night continue, everything remains connected in stillness. The river flows. The fields wait. The village sleeps. And the world, shaped by endless repetition and gentle rhythm, holds itself quietly in place. Until the first light returns again. Softly. Naturally. Like it always does. The first light of morning does not arrive in a single moment. It returns slowly, as if it is remembering where to be. At the edge of the sky, darkness begins to soften. Not disappearing yet, only loosening its hold on the world. The horizon takes on a faint change in tone, something between deep blue and the earliest hint of gray. The land is still quiet. The village remains mostly asleep. Inside the mud brick homes, people continue resting, unaware that the night is beginning to release its grip. Bodies remain still. Breathing remains slow. The sense of time is suspended in a calm, natural pause. Outside, the fields are unchanged at first glance. But light begins to touch them differently. Not fully. Only in suggestion. The river is the first to reflect this change. The Nile catches the earliest shift in the sky, turning from deep darkness into a faint, soft shimmer. Not bright yet, but no longer completely hidden. It moves as it always does. Steady. Patient. Uninterrupted. A few birds begin to stir near the water's edge. Not many. Only a few scattered movements in the reeds and along the banks. Their presence is gentle, as if testing the air before fully waking. The village itself begins to change in the smallest ways. A shift of cloth inside a home. A turning of a body from one side to another. A quiet breath that signals sleep is thinning. There is no urgency. No alarm. Only natural return. The farmers who worked the fields yesterday remain in rest, but their lives are already aligned with this moment. Their waking will not be sudden. It will come in stages, like every morning before it. Outside, the air is cooler than it will be later. It carries a faint freshness that belongs only to this time of day, before heat and labor begin again. The fields are still dark in most places, but their shapes are becoming more defined. Raised soil. Narrow irrigation lines. The faint geometry of work done over many seasons. Everything is still, but not empty. The land feels held in expectation. And then, very slowly, more light begins to arrive. It spreads gently across the horizon, not rushing forward, but unfolding. The sky shifts from deep blue toward a softer tone. Not yet gold, but no longer night. The transition is quiet enough that it could be missed if not watched carefully. Inside homes, the first real signs of waking begin. A farmer opens his eyes. He does not rise immediately. He remains still for a moment, listening to the quiet around him. Not because something is wrong, but because this is the natural space between rest and work. Others in the home begin to stir as well. A hand moves slightly. A sitting position is adjusted. A faint sound of movement spreads through the small space of the house. Outside, the river continues its steady presence, now reflecting a brighter edge of the growing sky. The Nile is never the same twice, and yet it never changes its essential rhythm. It carries the memory of every day before it, and every day still to come. In the fields beyond the village, the air begins to feel more awake. Not warmer yet, but more open. As if space itself is expanding again after the long quiet of night. Birds begin to move more freely now. Still not loud. Still not crowded. But no longer hesitant. The land is gently re-entering life. And in the village, the cycle begins again in its familiar way. People will rise soon. Fire will be lit. Bread will be prepared. Tools will be gathered. Paths will be walked once more toward the fields beside the river. Nothing changes quickly. Nothing breaks the rhythm. Everything continues in the same slow, steady pattern that has existed for generations. The night is now nearly gone. But it leaves behind no emptiness. Only the calm foundation for another day. And as the first full light prepares to appear, in the home begin to stir as well. A hand moves slightly. A sitting position is adjusted. A faint sound of movement spreads through the small space of the house. Outside, the river continues its steady presence, now reflecting a brighter edge of the growing sky. The Nile is never the same twice, and yet it never changes its essential rhythm. It carries the memory of every day before it, and every day still to come. In the fields beyond the village, the air begins to feel more awake. Not warmer yet, but more open. As if space itself is expanding again after the long quiet of night. Birds begin to move more freely now. Still not loud. Still not crowded. But no longer hesitant. The land is gently re-entering life. And in the village, the cycle begins again in its familiar way. People will rise soon. Fire will be lit. Bread will be prepared. Tools will be gathered. Paths will be walked once more toward the fields beside the river. Nothing changes quickly. Nothing breaks the rhythm. Everything continues in the same slow, steady pattern that has existed for generations. The night is now nearly gone. But it leaves behind no emptiness. Only the calm foundation for another day. And as the first full light prepares to appear, the world feels once again ready. Not rushed. Not forced. Just quietly prepared to begin again. Now the light comes more clearly. Still gentle. Still calm. But no longer uncertain. The sun begins to rise above the edge of the horizon, and the world slowly shifts from waiting into waking. The first true colors of morning spread across the land. Soft gold touches the tops of distant fields. Pale light reaches the roofs of mud brick homes. Shadows that were deep and heavy only moments ago begin to shorten and fade. The village is no longer asleep. But it is not yet fully active either. It is in between. A space where life begins to unfold again, step by step. Inside the homes, people rise more steadily now. There is no rush in the movement. No sharp beginning to the day. Instead, each action feels familiar, repeated, natural. A farmer sits up from his sleeping mat. He pauses for a moment, as he always does, before standing. The floor beneath him is cool. The air inside the home is still slightly shaded, holding on to the memory of night. Nearby, others are also waking. A quiet adjustment of clothing. A soft sound of movement. The slow return of awareness to the body. Outside, the village begins to show signs of life again. A door opens. Then another. Smoke begins to rise from small fires as cooking resumes. The smell of grain and simple food returns gently to the air. Everything happens gradually, without disruption. The Nile, always present, reflects the brighter sky now. Its surface carries the morning light in soft, shifting patterns. It does not change its rhythm for the village, but the village changes in response to it. Water will be needed again today. Fields will be walked again today. Work will begin again, just as it always does. Farmers gather their simple tools once more. Wooden handles, woven baskets, rope, and clay containers. Nothing is new. Everything is familiar. And that familiarity is what gives the day its calm structure. As people step outside their homes, the morning air feels fresh and open. The heat has not yet returned. The sun is present, but not strong. This is the most balanced part of the day. The village moves slowly into motion. Some people tend to animals. Others prepare food. Others simply stand for a moment outside their homes, looking toward the direction of the fields. No words are needed to explain what comes next. The path to the fields is already known. Soon, small groups begin to form again, just as they did on every previous morning. Not gathered by command, but by shared rhythm, by shared life. The farmers begin walking once more toward the land beside the river. The same paths, the same direction, the same steady movement that connects every day to the one before it. The fields wait in the distance. Quiet, patient, already shaped by seasons of care. The Nile flows beside them, unchanged in its presence, carrying time forward without interruption. And as the farmers move through the soft morning light, the world feels once again complete in its cycle. Night has fully ended. Day has fully returned. And life continues, as it always does, in calm and steady repetition. By the time the sun is fully lifted into the morning sky, the farmers are already walking the familiar paths toward the fields. The ground beneath their feet feels the same as always. Packed earth, softened in places by time and passing seasons. Small uneven ridges where many footsteps have traveled before. Dust that rises briefly, then settles again without hurry. Nothing about the path changes from one day to the next. And yet each walk feels slightly new, because the light is never exactly the same. The river appears again in the distance as they move forward. The Nile, steady and quiet, stretches alongside the cultivated land like a constant companion. It does not speak. It does not move faster or slower for anyone. It simply continues, carrying its unseen influence across every field it touches. As the farmers reach their working areas, the fields open before them in calm familiarity. Soil prepared yesterday still holds its shape. Water channels still trace their narrow paths through the earth. Sections of land are already marked by earlier labor, waiting for continuation rather than beginning. Work does not start from zero. It always begins from what was left unfinished. A farmer kneels near a channel, placing his hand lightly into the soil. It is cool at first, then slowly warms under the morning air. He watches the water for a moment, studying how it moves. Not with urgency, but with understanding built from repetition. A small adjustment is made. A bit of earth pressed into place. Water responds quietly, shifting its direction without resistance. Nearby, another farmer begins loosening soil again. The motion is steady. Simple. Familiar. The kind of movement that does not require constant thought, only attention. Lift. Press. Turn. The earth breaks gently under the tool, becoming ready once more for whatever it will hold. Across the fields, similar actions unfold at the same time. not coordinated in a strict way, but aligned through habit and shared rhythm. Some workers focus on irrigation, others on soil preparation, others on areas where planting will continue or be adjusted. The field is not one single task. It is many small tasks happening together in quiet harmony. The sun rises a little higher now, and the light grows stronger. Still not harsh. Still comfortable. But gradually more present on the skin, on the soil, on everything it touches. Shadows shorten again. The river reflects brighter tones as the day advances. And the farmers continue their work without interruption. There is no sense of beginning or ending in these hours. Only continuation. A cycle that repeats in small variations, but never loses its structure. Occasionally, a farmer pauses and stands upright for a moment. Not to stop working entirely, but to observe. To see how the field is responding. To check water levels across a wider area. To understand what the land is asking for next. These pauses are brief, but important. They are part of the rhythm, just like movement. The Nile remains constant beside them, shaping everything indirectly. Its presence is not dramatic. It is foundational. Without it, none of this structure would exist. And because of it, life continues in this slow, dependable way. As the morning settles fully into its working hours, the fields become a space of quiet repetition once again. Not silence. Not noise. But something in between. The soft sound of labor carried across earth and water. And the steady continuation of a day that feels both ordinary and necessary. As the morning moves forward, the light becomes stronger and more direct. The sun climbs higher, and with it, the feeling of the land begins to change once again. What was gentle and cool earlier now starts to warm steadily. Not suddenly. Not sharply. But in a slow, natural rise that touches everything at the same time. The soil begins to feel warmer underfoot. The air above the fields grows stiller. Even the distant river reflects a brighter, more intense shimmer as sunlight spreads across its surface. The farmers continue working, but the rhythm begins to adjust. Movements that were steady in the morning now become more measured. A little slower. A little more deliberate. The land does not demand urgency. It only asks for attention that matches its condition. A farmer bends near an irrigation channel, watching how the water responds to the heat. It still flows, but the surface glints more strongly now. Small ripples catch the light before disappearing into the narrow path of earth. He adjusts a small ridge of mud. Not changing much. Just guiding. Nearby, another farmer pauses longer between motions of loosening soil. The tool still lifts and presses into the ground, but the intervals between movements grow slightly wider. The heat is not harsh yet, but it is present enough to be felt in the body. On the skin. In the breath. In the quiet awareness that the day has reached another turning point. Across the fields, the same gradual slowing appears everywhere. Not as a stop, but as a shift. Work continues, but it becomes less about expansion and more about maintenance. Water is checked more carefully. Soil is adjusted in smaller sections. Planting, where it continues, is done with slower hands. The land is still active. But it is also beginning to ask for rest. In the distance, the Nile remains unchanged in its movement. But its reflection looks brighter now, almost shimmering under the stronger light. It carries the heat of the day along its surface, even as it continues its steady flow without effort. Birds move less frequently across the sky at this time. Their activity shifts closer to shaded areas, near reeds, or along the riverbanks. The open fields feel more still, more open, more exposed. And so, farmers begin to naturally seek moments of shade again. Not as a full break yet, but as brief pauses. A step beneath a tree. A moment beside a wall. A short rest from direct sunlight before returning to work. These pauses are not planned. They are felt. The land itself encourages them. The rhythm of the day begins to divide again into phases. Work. Slow work. Rest. Then work again. As the sun continues to rise toward its peak, the fields settle into a quieter intensity. There is still movement everywhere. Still care. Still attention. But the pace is no longer the same as early morning. It has softened, adapting to the growing warmth. And in this steady adjustment, life continues without interruption. The river flows. The fields respond. The farmers follow the natural rhythm that has guided them for generations. And the day moves forward, calmly, into its brightest hour. By the time the sun reaches its highest and most direct point, the world changes its feeling again. Not in color. Not in shape. But in weight. The light becomes stronger, pressing down evenly across the fields. The air grows stiller, as if movement itself becomes more careful under the heat. The land does not stop. But it slows into a deeper kind of rhythm. Work continues in the fields beside the Nile, though it is no longer the same steady motion of the morning. Each action now carries more patience. More spacing between movements. A farmer bends to the soil, and the motion takes a little longer to complete. Not because the work is harder, but because the body moves more carefully in the heat. Another stands near an irrigation channel, watching the water flow with quiet attention. The surface of the water reflects the sun in small flashes, bright and steady, but not rushing. Even the river, though always moving, feels more distant in this hour. Not less important. Just more silent in its presence. Across the fields, workers continue in their separate areas. Some crouch low near the ground, adjusting soil in small sections. Others walk slowly between irrigation paths, checking where water has spread and where it has not. Everything becomes more deliberate. Nothing is wasted. Not movement. Not effort. Not even breath. The heat is not spoken about. It does not need to be. It is understood in every pause, every slower step, every moment of stillness between tasks. In some areas, work briefly stops. Not as an ending, but as a natural response. Farmers step into whatever shade is nearby. A tree. A wall. A narrow strip of shadow cast by raised earth. They sit quietly, letting the body settle. Water is shared in small amounts. Not cold. Not abundant. But enough to bring a sense of balance back to the moment. During these pauses, there is little conversation. The silence is not empty. It is full of awareness. Full of shared understanding that the land will still be here when the heat eases. The Nile continues its slow, constant movement nearby. It does not change with the sun's position. It does not pause for rest. It flows as it always has, carrying the memory of upstream rains and distant lands no one in the village will ever see. And yet, everything here depends on it. Even this moment of rest exists because of it. After some time, the farmers return to their work. Not suddenly. Not all at once. But gradually, as shade shifts and the sun continues its slow path. The fields remain unchanged in structure, but the feeling of them shifts slightly with the angle of light. Soil appears brighter in some places, deeper in others. Water channels glint and then fade as the sun moves. The afternoon is not empty. It is simply slower, more internal, less outward in motion. A farmer resumes loosening soil, the movement now even more measured than before. Another adjusts a small section of irrigation, careful not to disturb too much at once. The work is still present everywhere, but it is quieter in its expression. This is the part of the day where endurance becomes more important than speed, where presence matters more than force, where repetition becomes almost meditative in its rhythm. The sun remains high, but its intensity begins to feel less sharp as time slowly prepares for change again. Not yet evening, not yet relief, but the beginning of transition. And through it all, the farmers continue. Steady, calm, connected to the land, the river, and the long rhythm of days that do not break, but gently unfold. As the afternoon slowly continues, something subtle begins to shift in the quality of light. It is not a sudden change. It is more like a soft turning. The sun still stands high, but it no longer feels as sharp as before. Its strength is steady, yet gradually less intense at the edges, as if the day itself is beginning to exhale. In the fields, farmers continue their work, though now with a quiet sense of nearing completion. Not everything is finished. Not everything is meant to be finished in a single stretch of time. But small sections of the day's labor begin to reach natural stopping points. A stretch of soil has been fully loosened and left in a condition ready for later planting. A water channel has been adjusted and now flows in a balanced, steady path. A small area has been checked, corrected, and left to settle. These are not dramatic endings. They are gentle closures. The kind that happen without announcement. A farmer pauses and stands for a moment, looking across the field. Not evaluating with urgency. Just observing. The land feels different now compared to morning. Not in structure, but in completion. More has been shaped. More has been guided. More has been brought into alignment with the rhythm of water and soil. Nearby, others begin similar pauses. Some remain standing. Some crouch briefly to rest their hands. Some simply sit for a moment at the edge of their work. The heat is still present, but it no longer dominates in the same way. It is now part of the background rather than the center of attention. The river continues its steady presence beside the fields. It reflects the afternoon sky in softer tones now, less bright than midday, but still full of movement and life. The Nile does not signal the end of work, but it always marks the passage of time. And those who live beside it feel that passage without needing to name it. In the distance, the village is faintly visible. Not yet fully active in evening preparation, but no longer in the distant stillness of midday rest. Smoke may begin to rise again from small cooking fires later. Paths will soon be walked in return. Homes will receive the farmers back from the fields as the day moves forward. But for now, there is still work to be gently completed. The final adjustments of irrigation. The last checks of soil. The careful gathering of tools that will not be needed again until tomorrow. Movements are slower now, not from fatigue alone, but from the natural winding down of the day's labor. Even effort begins to soften. A wooden tool is placed carefully on the ground. Not dropped. Not abandoned. Just released from use. Hands that have worked through soil and water all day now pause more frequently. Fingers rest for a moment before moving again. Breath is steadier. The body begins to shift toward return. The sun continues its slow descent from its highest point, though it is still far from the horizon. Shadows begin to grow again, almost imperceptibly at first, stretching a little longer across the fields. The land responds quietly to this change. Not changing shape, but changing feeling. Less pressure. More openness. As the afternoon moves deeper, the idea of returning home begins to settle gently in the background of awareness. Not as urgency, but as quiet expectation. The fields will be left as they are. The river will continue without interruption. And the farmers will walk back along the same paths they walked in the morning, carrying with them the memory of the day's steady work. For now, everything remains in motion, but softened. Slower. Calmer. Like the land itself is beginning to prepare for rest again, even before the people do. As the afternoon deepens, the fields begin to feel different in a way that is not immediately visible, but slowly understood. The work does not stop suddenly. It loosens. Like something that has been held carefully for a long time finally being allowed to rest in place. Farmers move through their sections of land with quieter attention now. Not less care. Just less urgency. A final pass along an irrigation channel is made, checking the flow one more time. The water still moves steadily, guided by the small shapes of earth that have been placed throughout the day. A farmer watches it for a longer moment than before. Not adjusting. Just observing. Ensuring that nothing will shift unexpectedly after they leave. Nearby, another farmer smooths a patch of soil that has already been worked several times. The motion is light now, almost like closing a chapter without words. Lift. Press. Smooth. Then stillness. Across the fields, similar endings happen in different places at the same time. Not coordinated, but naturally aligned. Tools are no longer used for shaping or changing the land. They are used for finishing. A final scrape of soil from a wooden blade. A last adjustment of grip. A careful placement of tools on the ground, where they will rest until tomorrow. There is a quiet sense of completion spreading through the work, though no one names it. It is felt more than spoken. The sun continues its long descent, though it is still high enough to keep the fields bright. But the intensity is no longer the same as midday. It has softened. The land feels more open again, less pressed by heat, more comfortable for movement. Farmers begin to stand still more often. Not all at once, but gradually, like a slow wave moving through the fields. One person pauses. Then another. Then another. And in those pauses, the day's labor feels fully present for the first time as something that is ending rather than continuing. There is no celebration. No dramatic sense of completion. Only quiet recognition. Work has been done. The land has been cared for. Water has been guided. Soil has been shaped. And now, the fields are left in a state of calm readiness. The Nile remains constant beside them. Still flowing. Still present. Still carrying its ancient rhythm forward without interruption. A farmer looks toward the river for a moment. Not searching for anything. Just acknowledging its presence, as always. Then turns back toward the fields one last time. This final look is simple. Not emotional. Not reflective in a heavy sense. Just steady awareness that this place will remain even after they leave it for the day. Tools are gathered slowly now. Some are carried under arms. Some are slung over shoulders. Some are held loosely in hands that are no longer actively working. The weight of them feels different now. Not lighter, but finished. Paths begin to form again. The same paths used in the morning. But now they carry a different feeling. Morning was beginning. This is return. Movement toward home starts gradually, with no single moment marking the start. One farmer steps away from the field edge. Then another follows. Then small groups begin to naturally align into walking pace. The fields remain behind them, quiet and steady under the afternoon light. Still holding the shape of the day's work. Still shaped by human hands, but now resting. And as the farmers begin their slow walk back toward the village, the rhythm of the day turns gently toward its final phase. Not ending. Just returning. Like everything else in this land, it moves forward without rush, carrying the quiet memory of labor into the calm that comes before evening. The walk back from the fields begins the same way it always does. Without a clear start. Without a spoken signal. Just a gradual turning away from the land that has held the day's work. Farmers move along the familiar paths that stretch between the cultivated fields and the village. These paths are worn into the earth by countless days of movement, shaped not by design, but by repetition. Each step carries a soft shift of dust. Not heavy. Not thick. Just enough to rise briefly and then settle again, as if the ground itself is gently acknowledging the passage of time. The sun is lower now. Still bright, but no longer at its strongest point. Its light stretches across the land at a wider angle, touching the fields, the irrigation channels, and the distant river with a softer tone. Shadows begin to lengthen again. Slowly. Almost imperceptibly at first. Then more clearly as the farmers continue walking. The air feels different on the way back. Not cool yet, but less intense than in the middle of the day. A slight easing that the body notices before the mind names it. Cloth moves more freely. Breathing feels less pressured. Even footsteps seem more relaxed. Behind them, the fields grow quieter with distance. They are not empty. They are simply left in their natural state after labor. Soil remains shaped. Water continues to flow where it has been guided. Small sections of land hold the marks of the day's careful attention. Nothing is undone. Nothing is left incomplete in urgency. It is simply left as it is, for now. The Nile remains visible for part of the walk, depending on the path. Its surface reflects the changing sky in a calmer brightness now, no longer sharp with midday light, but softened by the afternoon's descent. It continues its movement without interruption. Always the same. Always changing in subtle ways. Farmers walk in small groups or alone, depending on where their work ended. There is little conversation. Not because there is nothing to say, but because the day has already spoken through action. The silence between them is not empty. It is full of shared understanding. The return path carries a different kind of awareness than the morning path. Morning was movement toward effort. This is movement away from it. A slow release. A letting go of the field's immediate demands. The village becomes more visible ahead as they walk. Small shapes of homes begin to appear in the distance. Low structures of mud brick, blending naturally into the earth around them. Thin lines of smoke rise from some areas, hinting at cooking beginning again. Life preparing to shift from work to rest. As they draw closer, the sound of the village begins to return. Still faint at first. Then gradually clearer. A door opening. A soft voice calling. A movement of animals being guided into enclosures. These are not loud sounds. They are part of the village's evening rhythm. The farmers continue walking at the same steady pace. No change in urgency. No acceleration toward home. just continuation of the return. The fields are now fully behind them. The river remains to the side or in the distance, depending on the path, still flowing as it always has. And the land they leave behind feels unchanged, yet quietly marked by their presence. Work has been completed for the day. Not finished in a final sense, but set down. And as the village grows closer, the transition from field to home becomes more present. The day is not ending yet, but it is clearly moving toward its softer hours. And everything begins to slow into that familiar evening rhythm, where work fades, and rest slowly begins to take its place. As the farmers reach the village, the air feels different again. Not because the land has changed, but because the focus of the day has shifted. The fields are now behind them, quiet and distant, holding the shape of everything that was done there. The village, by contrast, feels more present now. More active. More awake in a different way. Small cooking fires are already burning. Not large flames, but controlled ones. Carefully tended. Enough to heat water, soften grain, prepare simple meals for the evening. Smoke rises slowly from many homes, drifting upward in thin, steady lines before fading into the sky. The farmers enter the village gradually. Some walk alone. Some in pairs. Some in small groups that formed naturally during the return. Their movements are slower than in the morning, but not from fatigue alone. It is the weight of completion. The body carrying the quiet awareness that the day's work has been done. Inside homes, life is already shifting into evening rhythm. Water is brought in. Bread is prepared again. Simple food is arranged with practiced care. Everything is familiar. Nothing needs explanation. A farmer steps into his home. The doorway is low, and he lowers his head slightly as he always does. Inside, the space feels warmer than the outside air, holding the faint memory of cooking and shelter. His family is there. Not in loud greeting. Not in celebration. But in quiet presence. A look. A small movement. The natural recognition of return. Food is shared slowly. Bread, perhaps softened slightly by warmth. Onions or dried fruit when available. Water passed carefully from one hand to another. The meal is not rushed. There is no need for urgency now. Outside, the village continues its gentle evening motion. Animals are settled into their places. Tools are stored away for the night. Small groups of people stand briefly outside homes, speaking in low voices. Conversations are simple. About the fields. About water. About the day's conditions. Nothing heavy. Nothing distant. Just the natural sharing of lived experience. As the sun lowers further, the light across the village softens again. Walls of mud brick glow faintly in the fading brightness. Shadows stretch between homes. Paths that were busy in the morning now feel quieter, more open. The Nile is no longer the center of attention, but it remains present in memory and in direction. Everything here still depends on it. Even in rest. Inside homes, the sounds of cooking fade as meals are finished. People sit quietly after eating. Some remain still. Some adjust their position slightly on woven mats or simple seating. The sense of the day loosens further. Work no longer presses against the mind. It has moved into memory. Outside, the sky begins to shift toward evening color. Soft tones spread across the horizon. Not bright. Not dramatic. Just calm transition. The village becomes quieter with each passing moment. Not all at once, but gradually. like breath slowing after a long day. And in that slowing, life settles into its evening form. A time that belongs neither to work nor to sleep, but to the space between them. A space of quiet return, and gentle stillness beginning to grow. As evening deepens, the last light of the sun begins to thin across the horizon. It is no longer bright, not even soft in a strong way. It becomes something quieter than that. A fading presence. A slow dimming of the world. The village, which had still held small traces of movement after the return from the fields, now begins to settle more fully into stillness. One by one, the sounds of the day disappear. Cooking fires are reduced to glowing embers. Voices grow fewer and softer, until they become only occasional murmurs inside or near homes. Doors close gently. Not with force. Just enough to mark the transition from outside to inside. From day to night. Inside the mud-bricked homes, people remain close together in quiet comfort. There is no urgency left in the body. Only rest preparing itself. The farmers sit or lie down again on woven mats, the same places where they woke the previous night. But they do not think of repetition. Only of completion. The day has passed through them fully. Morning movement. Field work. Heat. Rest. Return. Evening. And now, stillness. Outside, the Nile continues its steady presence. Even in darkness, it does not stop. It moves through the land as it always has, carrying life without needing attention, without needing recognition. The river does not separate day from night. It simply continues. A few final traces of light remain in the sky. Thin lines of pale color near the horizon. Slowly, they disappear. Not suddenly. Not sharply. Just gradually, like a breath leaving the world. As night arrives more fully, the village becomes almost completely quiet. Not empty, but deeply calm. The kind of calm that settles after a long, steady effort. A calm that does not demand anything more from the day. The farmers are now at rest. Their bodies still carry the memory of movement. Of soil. Of water. Of walking paths and field edges. But all of it is now soft inside them. No longer active. Only remembered. Outside, the air cools slightly. A gentle shift that moves across the village, touching walls, roofs, and paths before continuing toward the fields. Even the land seems to breathe more slowly at night. The fields remain in darkness now. But they are not forgotten. They hold the shape of everything done during the day. Water channels quietly settled. Soil shaped and left ready. Paths waiting for tomorrow's return. Everything remains in place. Nothing is lost. The sky above fills with deeper darkness again. And with it, a sense of vast stillness spreads over the land. Not heavy. Not empty. Just wide. The kind of stillness that belongs to ancient places where life follows cycles older than memory. Inside the homes, sleep begins to arrive. Not all at once, but gradually. Like a soft closing of awareness. One person after another drifting into rest. The day is no longer active anywhere in the village. It exists now only as memory and continuation. And the world returns fully to night. A night that does not interrupt life. Only holds it gently until morning returns again. The river flows. The fields rest. The village sleeps. And everything remains connected in quiet balance. As it always has. As it always will. Slow. Steady. Endless in its gentle rhythm. Now the night is fully present. There is no remaining light in the sky, only depth. A wide, steady darkness that rests over the land like a soft covering. It is not heavy. It does not press down. It simply exists, surrounding everything in calm stillness. The village is quiet in a way that feels complete. Not a temporary silence, but a settled one. Inside the mud brick homes, people sleep deeply now. Bodies that worked through the day have finally released their tension. Hands that shaped soil, guided water, and carried tools now rest without movement. Breathing is slow, even, natural. Outside, the paths between homes are empty. The dust that rose during the day has fully settled again into the earth. The marks of footsteps remain, but they are no longer active. They are only traces of movement that has already passed. The Nile continues its steady flow through the darkness. It does not change for night. It does not pause. It carries its motion forward in silence, a constant presence that never asks for attention. Sometimes, faint reflections of starlight touch its surface, breaking and reforming as the water moves. But even those reflections are brief. The river remains more felt than seen. Beyond the village, the fields lie still. They are not empty. They are simply resting in their own quiet state. Soil holds the memory of the day's shaping. Water sits in carefully guided paths. The land does not move, but it is not lifeless. It is in a pause between actions. A waiting that is not inactive, but prepared. Insects begin their night patterns. Small sounds that belong to darkness fill the spaces between silence. Subtle. Rhythmic. Not loud enough to disturb rest. Just enough to remind that life continues in many forms, even when human movement has stopped. Far above, the sky is fully open now. Stars appear clearly, scattered across vast space. They do not move quickly. They do not change visibly. They simply remain, steady and distant, like quiet witnesses to the rhythm of land and river below. The air is cooler now. Not cold. Just softened by the absence of sunlight. It moves gently across rooftops, fields, and riverbanks, passing through everything without resistance. In this hour, time feels less structured. There is no division of tasks. No movement between places. Only stillness. The kind that allows everything from the day to settle fully into memory. Inside the village, sleep deepens further. Occasional small shifts in position. A turning of the body. A quiet breath. Then stillness again. The cycle of human life here is not separated from the land. It is shaped by it. The river's rhythm. The sun's path. The soil's response. All of it woven together into a steady, repeating flow that does not break, even in silence. The night continues without urgency. There is no need for change. No need for movement. Only the passage of time, slow and even, across sleeping fields and resting homes. And in this deep quiet, the world feels balanced. Not complete in a final way, but complete for now. A moment held gently between days, where everything is allowed to be still, before morning slowly returns again. The deepest part of night has a different feeling than the earlier darkness. It is not simply the absence of light. It is a kind of still fullness. A silence that feels complete in every direction. The village remains asleep, held in that calm space where time moves without being noticed. No fires are burning now. No voices are speaking. Even the smallest movements inside homes have settled into long stillness. Outside, the air is at its coolest point. It moves slowly across the land, touching the mud brick walls, the narrow paths, and the quiet edges of fields that stretch beyond the village. Everything feels suspended. Not frozen. Just resting. The Nile continues its movement through the stillness. It does not change in tone or speed with the night. It flows as it always does, carrying the memory of distant rains and unseen places far beyond the fields and villages along its banks. Sometimes the water reflects faint starlight, but even that is soft and temporary. The river is more presence than image in this hour. The fields remain dark and undisturbed. But not empty. They hold what was given to them during the day. Water that has settled into soil. Earth that has been shaped and loosened. Channels that have been carefully adjusted to guide flow. All of it remains in place, quietly waiting. There is no urgency in the land. Only readiness. Above, the sky is still deep and wide. Stars remain steady, unchanged, scattered across distance that feels both near and unreachable. They do not signal time in a direct way. But they are part of its passing. Slow. Constant. Unmoving in appearance, yet always present. Inside the village, sleep continues. But now, there is a subtle shift in the feeling of time. The night is beginning to reach its final stretch. Not because anything changes visibly, but because the long stillness carries a sense of nearing return. The world is not yet waking, but it is preparing without awareness. In the body of a sleeping farmer, there is no thought of morning. And yet, the rhythm of rest itself begins to loosen slightly. Breath remains slow, deep, even. But there is a gentle movement within stillness, as if life is quietly turning toward its next phase. Outside, the air begins to feel slightly less heavy. Not warmer yet. Just subtly different. A shift so small it might not be noticed unless the night is watched closely. The river continues its steady path. The fields remain still. The village rests. And the world holds itself in balance between darkness and what is not yet light. This is the final quiet of night. A space that does not announce change, but allows it to begin. Slowly. Softly. Without interruption. And somewhere beyond the horizon, where sky meets land in unseen distance, the first suggestion of morning is already forming. Not visible yet, but present in the way darkness feels less absolute than before. The long night is still here, but it is no longer at its deepest point. And soon, without rush or sound, the cycle will turn again. The change does not announce itself. It arrives so gently that the night almost seems unaware it is ending. At the far edge of the sky, where darkness meets distance, the blackness begins to soften. Not into light yet. Only into something less absolute. A deep blue that is quieter than night, as if the sky is slowly remembering color again. The village is still asleep. Nothing moves in any visible way. But the world itself is no longer exactly the same as it was an hour before. The Nile reflects this change first. Not brightly. Not clearly. Only in the faintest adjustment of tone along its surface. The water remains steady, but the sky above it is beginning to shift, and so it reflects a different kind of darkness now. One that is no longer fully closed. The fields remain quiet. Soil that was shaped and tended still holds its form. Irrigation channels rest where they were left. Nothing has changed in structure. Only in feeling. The air is at its calmest point just before dawn. Cool. Still. Light enough to feel open, but dark enough to remain fully night. Inside the homes, the farmers sleep on. Breathing remains slow. Bodies remain relaxed. But there is a subtle shift in the quality of rest itself. Not waking. Not awareness. Only a natural loosening, as if sleep is preparing to release its hold when the time comes. No one decides this. It simply happens, as it always has. Outside, a faint movement begins among distant birds near the river. Not many. Only a few. Testing the air. Responding to changes that are still too small for human sight. The village remains quiet. But the silence is no longer completely still. It carries a sense of transition now. A gentle turning that cannot be seen directly, only felt in the way night no longer feels endless. The sky continues to shift. Very slowly. Layer by layer. Darkness remains, but it is thinning at its edges. Like fabric worn soft by time. The stars are still present above, but they feel slightly less sharp, as if the sky around them is changing first. Inside a home, a farmer shifts slightly in sleep. Not waking. Just adjusting. A natural movement that belongs to deep rest approaching its end. Others remain completely still. The village as a whole remains in silence. But beneath that silence, the rhythm of the day to come is already forming. Not in action. Not in sound. Only in continuity. The fields will be walked again. The river will be approached again. Tools will be lifted again. But none of that exists yet in thought or motion. Only in the slow turning of time. The horizon grows a little lighter. Still not bright. Still not day. But no longer fully night. And in that narrow space between darkness and light, everything remains calm. The world does not rush forward. It simply continues. As it always has. As it always will. A cycle without beginning or end. Only return. Only rhythm. Only the quiet certainty that morning is coming again. Slowly. Without sound. Without interruption. Just as it always does. Now the change becomes clearer. Still gentle. Still unhurried. But no longer uncertain. The edge of the horizon lightens more steadily, and what was once deep night begins to dissolve into early morning. A pale glow spreads outward, touching the sky first, then slowly reaching down toward the land. The Nile reflects it immediately. Not brightly, but with a quiet shimmer that moves along its surface like a soft line of returning light. The river does not change its pace. It only changes its appearance under the sky. In the village, sleep begins to loosen. Not suddenly. Not all at once. But in small, natural ways. A farmer turns slightly and opens his eyes without urgency. He does not rise yet. He simply lies still for a moment, as he always does, feeling the return of morning without needing to think about it. Nearby, others begin to stir as well. A shift of cloth. A slow breath. A quiet adjustment of posture. The village does not wake like something startled. It wakes like something familiar returning. Outside, the air begins to feel different. Still cool. Still calm. But no longer heavy with deep night. It carries a softness now that belongs only to early morning. Birds near the river become more active. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just more present. Small movements across reeds and along the water's edge begin to increase. The fields beyond the village are slowly revealed again as light spreads further. Soil, irrigation channels, and paths regain their shape under the growing brightness. Nothing has changed since yesterday. And yet everything feels slightly renewed. Inside homes, movement increases gradually. A farmer sits up fully now, then stands slowly. There is no rush in the motion, only the natural return to the beginning of another day. In another home, food preparation begins again. Small fires are lit carefully. Grain is gathered. Water is handled with familiar care. Everything resumes in its quiet rhythm. Outside, the first real light of morning reaches the rooftops of the village. Mud brick walls begin to glow softly in the new sun. Shadows retreat from narrow paths. The village starts to become visible in full detail again. The Nile, always present, continues its steady flow beside it all, reflecting sky and time in equal measure. Soon, farmers begin stepping outside their homes, one by one, then in small groups. The same movement as before, the same direction forming naturally, toward the fields, toward the river, toward the day that is beginning again. There is no surprise in this return, no change in expectation, only the continuation of a cycle that has no clear beginning and no final end. Morning has arrived fully now, and with it, life begins once more to move outward from stillness into gentle action. The land waits, as it always does, and the people return to it, as they always have. Slowly, calmly, in the steady rhythm of a world that never truly stops. It only turns. Now the morning is fully present. The village is awake again. The fields are visible in clear light. The river moves beside them as it always has, unchanged in its direction, unchanged in its patience. And the farmers begin another day. Not as something new, but as something continuing. A return to a rhythm that has already been lived thousands of times before, and will be lived again, long after this single day has passed. There is no final moment in their work. No true ending that arrives and stays. Only cycles. Morning. Work. Heat. Rest. Return. Night. And then morning again. Everything in this land moves in that quiet sequence, shaped by the Nile and the sun, by soil and water, by the steady needs of survival. The farmers do not think of it as history. They live inside it. Each step on the path to the fields is part of something larger than any one person. Each movement of water through a channel is part of something older than memory. Each harvest, each planting, each quiet adjustment of earth is part of a rhythm that does not belong to one lifetime alone. It belongs to the land itself, and to the river that gives it shape. As the farmers walk toward their work again, the fields receive them without resistance. The same soil, the same water, the same steady patterns of care. Nothing is final here. Nothing is completed in a permanent way. Even rest is temporary. Even labor returns again and again, in different light, under different skies, but always with the same gentle structure. The Nile continues flowing. Not faster. Not slower. Just onward. Through seasons. Through generations. Through lives that rise and fade like the light over its surface. And in that endless movement, everything remains connected. The village. The fields. The river. The sky. All part of a single, quiet system that never fully stops. Only changes form. Now the farmers are already spreading out across the land again. Tools are lifted. Water is guided. Soil is touched. And the day continues as if it has always been continuing. There is no final conclusion to this kind of life. Only presence. Only rhythm. Only the steady, unbroken flow of days shaped by the river and the sun. And so, As the morning settles into work once more, the story does not end. It simply becomes part of the same long, quiet history that is still unfolding. Slowly. Gently. Without ever truly stopping.